Welcome back to the deep dive. Pull up a chair, clear the desk, because today we are really digging into some ideas fundamental to understanding how we learn.
And maybe more importantly, how we learn best.
Exactly. It's a perspective that's really shifted thinking in education.
Oh, definitely. And it ripples out, into how we just make sense of things every day.
Absolutely. We're doing a deep dive today into constructivist theories of learning, and we're working from some really insightful excerpts from Constructivist Theories of Learning Self-Sensei.
And the mission really is to get our heads around this core idea that you, the learner, you're not just waiting for knowledge to be, deposited.
Right.
You're much more active. You're like an architect, building your own understanding.
I like that, architect. It's not filling an empty bucket, is it?
Not at all. It's complex construction.
And thinking about it that way, it totally changes how you approach learning itself. Okay, let's unpack this because, well, it's not just theory, is it?
No, it's about your mind, how it works, your experiences, how you actively build, your world of understanding.
Okay, so let's start right at the foundation. If learning is construction, what's the main principle?
The absolute core idea is that learners are active agents. Simple as that. You don't passively absorb.
You actively create.
You create your own understanding, your own knowledge. Yes.
And the source material emphasizes it's not just a one-off creation. It's rooted in experience and reflection. A cycle.
Exactly that. A cycle. You encounter something new, right? You experience it,
Yeah.
see it, touch it, interact somehow.
Okay.
And then this is crucial. You reflect on it. You try to make sense of it, interpret it, fit it in with what you already know.
Which feels like the total opposite of that older idea, the transmissive model.
Oh, completely. That old model pictured knowledge as this static thing passed down sender to receiver.
Like pouring water.
Yeah. Constructivism says, no, learning is active, it's interpretive, you're translating, you're integrating, you're building something new for yourself.
So the focus shifts then, away from just the teacher or the book.
And onto the learner. Your internal processes, your history, how you reflect, that's central.
Right. So it's this dynamic loop. Experience
Leads to reflection.
which changes your understanding.
And that change shapes how you see the next thing, your future interpretations, future experiences. It's always refining.
It sounds so much richer than just, memorizing facts for a test.
It is. And it feels, incredibly relevant now, doesn't it? For dealing with all the information flying around.
Okay, so this core idea, it's built on several key principles that really define the constructivist view. What are some of those cornerstones?
Well, first, it just doubles down on what we said. Knowledge is actively constructed,
Yeah.
not passively received.
You're not a tape recorder.
Exactly. You're transforming it, internalizing it, making it yours. Your mind is actively wrestling with it.
Wrestling's a good word.
And that wrestling, it's shaped by the second principle, the huge role of your prior knowledge and experience.
Right, you're never starting from scratch.
Never. You bring this incredibly rich tapestry, Everything you've seen, done, learned before. New stuff has to be reconciled with that.
So you either fit it into your existing patterns,
Or you have to change the patterns, modify them.
which means how I learn something is going to be different from how you learn it based on our different tapestries.
Precisely. It makes learning deeply individual, which leads to the third principle. Learning is an active, interpretive process.
Because you're building, you have to do stuff.
You have to ask questions, explore, apply things, interpret through your own lens. It needs mental engagement, often physical too.
But it's not always a solo build, is it? There's another principle about interaction.
Oh, absolutely. Learning is a social activity, hugely important. Knowledge is often co-constructed.
Built together.
Yes, through talking, arguing, working with others, peers, teachers, the community. Shared meanings get negotiated. Your own construction gets shaped by hearing other people's perspectives.
Okay, that's interesting, because it feels like there could be a tension there. Knowledge is personal because of my tapestry.
But also social because we build it together. How does that work?
Well, it's not really either. Think of it like this. Your final understanding inside your head is personal, but the tools you use to build it, like language, and the ideas you grappled with, the perspectives you encountered, those are deeply social and cultural. They shape your personal build.
Right, that makes sense. It resolves that tension. What else?
Learning is contextual. Knowledge isn't abstract, floating free. It's tied to the situation, the environment, what you already know and believe right then.
So learning about bridges is better if you're actually looking at one or trying to design one.
Exactly. It's more powerful when it's connected to something real, authentic.
Gotcha.
And looping back to the individual aspect, knowledge is personal. Because your experiences and interpretations are unique, the knowledge you end up constructing is unique to you.
Even reading the same article, we might build different understandings. Totally.
Mm.
And that strongly implies, that good teaching probably needs to be differentiated. Acknowledge people start in different places and build differently.
Okay. Any other core principles?
Just a couple more key ones. Learning exists in the mind. Hands-on stuff is great, valuable even.
But it's the thinking about it.
Yes. The mental engagement, making connections, reflecting, forming thoughts, that's where the construction really happens, the processing.
Right.
And finally, motivation is a driver. Let's face it, building knowledge is effort.
It takes work.
It does. So learners need to want to do it, to invest that energy. Seeing the relevance, the purpose, that's a key. Teachers help foster that.
So it's this really holistic picture, cognitive, social, even emotional with the motivation part. It's the whole person building understanding. And these ideas, they didn't just appear out of thin air. They were, well, constructed by key thinkers. Who are the main architects we should know?
You absolutely have to start with Jean Piaget, often called the father of cognitive constructivism. His focus was squarely on the individual interacting with their environment.
Right, and he's famous for the stages of cognitive development in children.
Yes, his stage theory. Sensoromotor, that's like birth to two, learning through senses and actions.
Object permanence comes in there.
Exactly. Then pre-operational, maybe 2 to 7, using symbols, but still quite egocentric.
Struggle with conservation, like the water glasses.
Right. Then concrete operational, 7 to 11, thinking logically but about concrete things. They get conservation, classification.
And finally, formal operational, 11 onwards. Abstract thought, hypotheticals.
Though it's worth saying, contemporary views see development as maybe a bit more fluid than strict stages.
Okay. But his key ideas about how that development happens, assimilation and accommodation, those seem really central to the construction process itself.
Oh, they're the engine. Assimilation is taking new information and just fitting it into a mental box, a schema you already have.
Like the classic example. A toddler sees a cat, knows dog, points, and says dog.
Perfect example. Trying to make it fit. Accommodation is when it doesn't fit. The box has to change, or you need a whole new box. So the child eventually gets, okay, that's different, that's a cat. They have to modify their understanding of animals.
Right, building a new category.
And Piaget called the drive between these two, the push to make sense when things don't fit, equilibration. That feeling of imbalance, it pushes cognitive growth.
That, like, uncomfortable feeling when something just doesn't compute with what you thought.
That's it. That's equilibration pushing you towards accommodation. It's fascinating.
So Piaget really focused on the individual's mental building blocks. Who brought in the social world more strongly?
That would be Lev Vygotsky. Key figure for social constructivism. His big argument. Cognitive functions actually start in social interactions.
So learning isn't just influenced by society, it is social first?
At its heart, yes. Before it becomes internalized, individual thought.
And his most famous concept, the ZPD.
The zone of proximal development. Yeah. That's the sweet spot, the gap between what you can do totally on your own versus what you can do with help. Guidance, collaboration from someone who knows more, a teacher, a peer.
So learning happens best in that zone with support.
That's the idea. And that support mechanism, that's scaffolding.
Ah, okay. Like temporary supports in construction.
Exactly like that. Tailored help to get you through the ZPD task, then gradually removed as you become more capable. ZPD tells you what help is needed. Scaffolding is how you provide it.
And he also really emphasized language and culture, didn't he?
Hugely. Language wasn't just for talking to others, it was a tool for thinking. Moving from social speech to talking to yourself to inner thought.
Right.
And culture provides the whole context, the tools, symbols, social practices that shape how we build knowledge.
Wow. It's amazing how these ideas layer. Piaget's individual focus, then Vygotsky adding the social and cultural tools. Who else is key here?
Jerome Bruner.
Yeah.
He really built on both Piaget and Vygotsky, focused on active learning, structure, culture, language. He kind of bridged the cognitive and social views.
And you talk about discovery learning, right? Letting students figure things out.
Yes. Discovering underlying principles themselves. And the spiral curriculum, revisiting ideas at deeper levels as you mature.
Like circling back on a building plan to add detail.
Good analogy. And he described modes of representation, how we understand things.
The inactive, iconic, symbolic.
That's it. Inactive is action-based, like learning to ride a bike. Iconic is image-based, diagrams, mental pictures. Symbolic is language, math symbols, abstract stuff. A typical progression, but not rigid stages like Piaget's.
And he also helped develop that idea of scaffolding building on Vygotsky.
He did, yeah. Help popularize the term.
Okay, and finally, there's Ernst von Glasersfeld. He takes things in a slightly different, maybe more philosophical direction.
Right, that's radical constructivism. It's more philosophical. And it's pretty challenging. He argues that knowledge is built by the individual, yes, but it doesn't necessarily have to mirror some objective reality out there.
So it's not about finding the absolute truth of the world.
Not in the traditional sense, no. For Glasersfeld, knowledge is judged by its viability. Does it work? Is it functional? Does it help you make sense of and navigate your experience?
So it's about building a structure that's useful for you, not necessarily a perfect copy of the blueprint.
Exactly. Which you can imagine raises some pretty deep questions for education, especially in science. What are we aiming for?
Oh, wow, that is a twist. Okay, so we have Piaget, the individual builder, Vygotsky, the social site manager, Bruner, providing tools and strategies, and Glasersfeld questioning the blueprint itself. That's quite a crew. So this theory sounds pretty compelling, but what happens when you take it out of the books and into, say, a real classroom?
Yeah.
How does constructivism actually look in practice?
Well, it fundamentally changes things, especially the roles people play. The teacher, no longer the sage on the stage, just delivering facts.
Right, they become the guide on the side.
Precisely. More like an architect of the learning experience. They provide resources, set up challenges, ask probing questions, guide the thinking, but they don't do the building for the learner.
And the student. Their role changes dramatically, too.
Oh, yeah. From passive receiver to active agent. You take responsibility. You ask questions, explore, experiment, build your own meaning through doing things and thinking about them.
So what does that kind of classroom actually feel like?
It feels student-centered. Lots of interaction, collaboration. Group work isn't just filler. It's seen as essential for co-constructing knowledge, negotiating different viewpoints.
There's a sense of shared discovery.
Often, yes. Shared inquiry, teacher and students exploring together, and a real focus on the process, how you get there, not just the final answer.
Okay, conceptually that makes sense. But what about specific teaching methods? What kind of activities embody these ideas?
Well, a lot of popular active learning methods have constructivist roots. Think inquiry-based learning, IBL. Learning driven by the student's own questions.
Like researching a local issue they care about.
Exactly. Or problem-based learning, PBL. Working in groups to tackle complex, real-world problems.
Like those medical school case studies.
Perfect example. Requires research, collaboration, applying knowledge.
Cooperative and collaborative learning obviously fit the social constructivist side.
Definitely. Students working together on a shared goal, like a group presentation. And the 5E model. That's a very structured constructivist cycle.
Engage, explore.
Explain, elaborate, evaluate. Yeah, it guides students through that construction process step by step. Like a science lesson, starting with a cool demo to get you interested.
That sounds very deliberate in guiding the building process.
It is. And then there's discovery learning, exploring materials to find patterns, like using blocks to figure out area formulas.
The source mentioned using manipulatives in math, exploring patterns, doing real-world projects like a class garden budget.
Yeah, great examples.
Right.
Or just guided discussions where the teacher uses questions to push thinking deeper. Or exploratory discussions where students bounce ideas off each other.
Reciprocal teaching, too, where students lead parts of the discussion.
Right. All these methods overlap. But the core is getting learners actively doing the constructing, not just receiving.
And it sounds like being that facilitator, that guide on the side, takes a really different skill set than just lecturing, maybe more demanding.
Oh, absolutely. Effective constructivist teaching needs deep content knowledge, knowing where students might go wrong, common misconceptions, skilled classroom management for dynamic activities, and crucially, the ability to provide just the right support. That's scaffolding when and where individual students need it.
So teacher training is key.
Totally. Because as critics point out, if you just have minimal guidance without that skilled facilitation, it can easily become no guidance. Learners can get lost or build wrong ideas.
Okay, so constructivism, rich theory, engaging practices. But like any big idea, it's got challenges, criticisms. What's the pushback? What are the limitations?
Well, let's start with the strengths, why it's been so influential. Because you're actively building, it really fosters deep understanding and critical thinking. You go beyond just memorizing.
You learn how to think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Analyze, synthesize, evaluate. And that active engagement we talked about, huge plus.
More motivation, more ownership.
Significantly more. because it feels relevant, and you're doing it yourself.
And those skills, critical thinking, problem solving, they sound super transferable.
They really are. Learning to tackle problems this way helps you face new challenges later on. Plus, all that collaboration. Great for social and communication skills.
Does it help things stick? Better memory?
Research generally suggests yes. Actively processing, connecting to what you know, making it personal, it tends to lead to better long-term retention than just passively hearing something.
Okay, lots of compelling benefits. So where does it run into trouble?
Assessment is a big one, a really big one. If knowledge is personal, unique, how do you assess it fairly, especially in a standardized way?
Right. Traditional tests often look for one right answer, recalled facts.
Which doesn't really capture the depth or uniqueness of someone's constructed understanding. So you often need more complex, maybe subjective methods, portfolios, projects, observations, which are time-consuming.
And philosophically, standardized tests just feel off compared to the theory.
They can, yeah. Then there are the practicalities, time and resources.
It takes more effort.
For the teacher to plan these rich, inquiry-based activities? Absolutely. And for learners, exploring and constructing can sometimes take longer than just being told the answer. Plus, providing that individualized scaffolding in a big class, that's really demanding.
And you mentioned the risk of misconceptions earlier. Is that a major criticism?
It is, yeah. Especially from folks who argue for more direct, explicit instruction, particularly when you're totally new to something.
A novice learner.
Exactly. If novices who don't have much existing knowledge to build on are just left to discover without enough guidance, they can easily build wrong ideas or reinforce misconceptions.
The minimal guidance doesn't work critique.
That's the one. It often comes back to needing skilled scaffolding. Many argue the problem isn't constructivism itself, but poorly implemented, unguided discovery.
So, again, it hinges on teacher skill.
To a large extent, yes. A good facilitator knows how to guide construction effectively, address misconceptions.
Any equity concerns doesn't work for everyone.
That's another criticism raised. The worry is that purely self-directed approaches, if not carefully scaffolded, might favor students who already have stronger background knowledge, better language skills, maybe more support at home.
Potentially widening gap.
Potentially. Though the counterargument is that well-implemented constructivism, starting from where each learner is, could actually reduce gaps. So the debate is often about the implementation, the level of support.
Okay. And finally, is it the best approach for all learning, especially brand new topics?
That's debated. Some cognitive scientists argue that for absolute beginners lacking any foundation, some initial explicit instruction or clear demonstration might be more efficient to just get a basic framework down before diving into deeper construction.
So maybe it's not always the first step.
Oh, maybe it needs to be blended. The point is, it's a discussion. Is it the best start for all learners in all situations, or most powerful once some basics are in place?
Okay, so huge potential benefits, deep learning, engagement skills, but real challenges too around assessment, time, resources, and crucially, the need for skilled facilitation to guide construction, prevent errors, and ensure equity. Sounds like a thoughtful mix is often needed. So bring this back to today, the 21st century. Why is this way of thinking about learning still so critical now?
Well, look at the world. It demands people who can do more than just regurgitate facts. Constructivism directly builds those so-called 21st century skills.
Critical thinking, problem solving.
Creativity, collaboration, communication, yeah. These aren't separate subjects. They're skills you develop while you're actively grappling with complex ideas, constructing knowledge.
And technology. Seems like it could be a massive help here.
Oh, potentially huge. Tech itself isn't constructivist, right? But it offers amazing tools for constructivist learning.
How does it help the building process?
Well, it can open up inquiry access to huge databases, virtual labs, simulations. It can boost collaboration, online forums, shared documents. It can create authentic contexts. Think VR, AR, complex simulations.
Supports personalization, too. Adaptive systems.
Yes, and scaffolding. And it lets learners show what they've built in diverse ways, making videos, websites, digital portfolios.
But just throwing tech at it isn't the answer.
Absolutely not. Crucially, it depends how the teacher designs the experience, how they use the tech to foster active construction, inquiry, collaboration. Tech just amplifies the pedagogy, good or bad.
And thinking even bigger, this view has implications for the whole education system.
It does. It suggests curriculum should maybe focus more on depth over breadth, allowing time for real construction.
Teacher training needs to shift.
Towards facilitation skills, diverse assessment methods, absolutely, and policy. It needs to support learner-centered approaches, value authentic ways of showing understanding, not just standardized test scores.
Okay, so zooming out again. Constructivism, it's this profound shift. Learning isn't passive receiving, it's active, it's dynamic, it's deeply personal construction.
Built through experience, through reflection, shaped by our social world.
Yeah. From Piaget's individual focus to Vygotsky's social scaffolding, Bruner's practical methods, it's a really powerful way to think about how we come to know things.
Really is.
And yeah, there are challenges implementing it well. Assessment, support, equity, those are real hurdles. But its value as a philosophy guiding us towards deeper understanding, critical thinking, that feels undeniable. It challenges us to see learners not as empty buckets, but as capable architects, active builders of their own, vibrant worlds of understanding.
Which brings it right back to you, the listener. This isn't just for teachers in classrooms.
Not at all.
If knowledge is truly personal, constructed based on your unique experiences, your prior understanding, what fascinating structure might you build this week when you encounter something new? And maybe more importantly, how will you consciously go about building it?